it explodes or whatever at that high temperatures,
yes,
it caused each floor individually, or the first floor or whatever, to melt, which basically collapsed onto the one below. So it was like a collapsing all the way down.
But it was interesting to see that there wasn't any of it collapsing out of time. It all seemed to be going at the same time.
Well, even the one there was another programme on, I think it was Channel 4 the other night, and they were interviewing the firefighters that survived. You know, the ones that were in Stairwell B.
That was the road, or what was it? Something about 9/11. It was the road to 9/11, wasn't it? Yes.
But they were saying that that's how they heard it as well. It was like different stages of thunder all the time, like big loud bangs just coming down on each other.
That's right. I remember that.
You know, so I mean, that's just. I mean, I'm not a demolition man or anything, but it's just.
Well, I hope
I'm fed up with all like the conspiracy theories and that as well. Because if we're to believe that it was conspiracy theory, then what's to say that the ones that happened over in here in June last year were not conspiracies as well? And for 1 second, I don't believe that. You know what I mean? So why would they have a go at us if they didn't have the same thing against the Americans as well?
Up until recent times, I would have thought that it wasn't that. How can I put this? Don't want to upset anyone. I just believe that an element in this country, or maybe several elements actually, is inciting young people, seemingly across the whole of the country, to get involved in what can only be, in particular, knife crime. We're talking about, you know, that's primarily what takes my attention. But it's interesting that it seems to be all over the country at the same time. And I just wonder, is it triggered off by people who know which buttons to press to manipulate people? Or is it something less complicated than that? But it just seems to be of a type all over the country. And that's a lot of attention, isn't it? That's a lot of influence. There he's gone. He was calling me from his truck. A happy little truck. Do you know, John, no one's called me about Star Trek. I'm going to hold this piece of paper up because you heard me say they've remodelled the outside shots of the original Star Trek.
The Enterprise?
So what?
The Enterprise.
Yes, USS Enterprise. Did you notice that there was a book called Earth, the Only Planet of Choice, and Gene Roddenberry, in this book, it's not about him, it's about fundamentally Earth, the only planet of choice. But Gene Roddenberry went to see a very famous medium, and she hooked up, this is absolutely true, she hooked up with this group called the Council of Nine, and if you watch Star Trek, you see the number 9 comes up quite a lot.
Deep Space Nine?
Mm-hmm. But often there are 36, injured people, or 18 injured people. And I think if you look at the number of Enterprise, I think it's, and you add the digits up, there's 10, I think it's 261, is it? But whatever it is, it comes exactly to 9. So I thought that's interesting. They're obviously looking at the power of numerology. We've got
have a look at that.
Yeah, I thought you might like it. We've got a numerologist coming in on the programme, actually. I think it's tomorrow morning. Might not be, but we have definitely got one coming. It's either tomorrow or the following morning. Now, some more things to talk about. Obviously, I want to talk about Star Trek. They've updated original Star Trek, not so much a Final Frontier, it's probably a Final Straw. I think it looked rather kindly when things looked a little bit homemade. It's very interesting enough, actually, it's something that almost shares with the original Doctor Who. That was slightly homemade looking, wasn't it? Well, is that what we like about it? It's the fact that, yes, it's something we could have made and knocked up in the bedroom, and just said to friends when they come round, we'll just film a new production of our theatre set. Would you like to sit over there and pretend to be an alien? Still no calls on the wedding from hell. The Chinese wedding where they had strippers. 08704 20 2020. This is talkSPORT. Do you know, one of the exciting things is getting a new car, isn't it? But sometimes spending loads of cash on a new car isn't the right thing to do. Maybe you should consider a second-hand car. Are there advantages? After the news, Jason Dorr joins the programme from the Sunday Times magazine to give us an appreciation of what we could enjoy for a lot less than you might at first have thought. This is talkSPORT with Jason Dorr from the Sunday Times magazine. I'm Mike Allen.
On 1089 and 1053 AM.
This is my genuine belief.
Around the world.
I just said no.
Around the clock. From the Sky News Centre. talkSPORT on the Hour News.
The top stories from the Sky News Centre at 4.
On 1089 and 1053 AM. talkSPORT.
One of the delights of working in radio or in television is that if someone impresses you, you can ask them on the show. It's a liberty, isn't it? But every weekend I read Jason Dorr in the Sunday Times. He's a top motoring broadcaster as well, apart from being a journalist, and, as you know, a columnist with the Sunday Times. So as a fan, I thought it would be great to talk to him today. Welcome to the programme, Jason.
Thanks very much, Mike. Very kind words.
Well, you know, I read nothing but interesting stuff from you.
Oh, very kind.
I have a friend who's looking around for some inspiration for a car for her eldest daughter, and that started the whole idea of this programme. So she's thinking about spending £1,000.
Yeah.
And I thought maybe it could be something we can explore. Is it worth spending as little as that? Because a car of £2,000, will it be worth that much more?
Absolutely. I'm a big, I mean, as you know from reading my column, I'm a big fan of used cars, and I spend my life poring over the classifieds and the internet and either window shopping or buying stuff for myself, and I'm a great believer that you can get some great cars out there for next to no money at all.
Does this not suggest, though, that you've got to have a pretty good working knowledge of spanners and what to do with them?
Well, I mean, cars have become a lot more reliable. I mean, you go back to when I started driving, what was that? Gosh, 20 plus years ago.
Really?
And cars were, you know, they'd rust, and you had to kind of check the oil and you know, grease things, and all the, you know, there was proper fettling and maintenance involved. My first car was a Triumph Herald, and that was a 1967, and you really did have to kind of open the bonnet on a regular basis. But the last kind of decade or so, cars have become a lot more kind of self-sufficient, and they've got things like fuel injection on them now, and they've got things like ECUs that monitor the engines and this kind of thing, and they don't tend to rust in the same way. I mean, if you see a rusty car, 9 times out of 10 it's because it's had a bit of a crunch at some point, and the paintwork's been repaired, and it's not been done to the factory standard. So if you get a car that's, you know, been kind of, you know, remained intact from day one, you probably won't be unlucky and get something that's going to be rusty. So I'm a great believer. I genuinely think, you know, £1,000 is plenty to spend on a first car for a youngster. And there's some great cars out there if you kind of know what to narrow it down to, really.
So, can you give us 2 or 3 examples of what you might get for that sort of money?
Well, I think the big thing with young drivers is insurance. It's a case of, you know, heart and head, really. You've got to get a short list of cars that you know aren't going to be prohibitive to insure, because 1 or 2 groups when you're 18, 19, 20 years old can make a huge difference. You know, cars in Group 2 can be half the cost to insure of a car that's in Group 4, because you've got no claims bonus, and the insurers basically can pretty much charge you what you like. So you want to keep it down to cars with nice low insurance groups. Classic examples of that, things like Renault Clios, mid-90s Renault Clios, very plentiful, really cheap to kind of keep on the road. You've got 3 doors and 5 doors, you've got petrols, you've got diesels, and it was also about the age when they started to put things like power steering on for standard, which, if you think about it, most learner drivers will have learnt in a driving school car, and they'll be used to power steering. If they jump into something without power steering, it can really make the difference between it being, you know, virtually impossible to drive or not. So
sure.
I think a Renault Clio is a really sound car to look at. Ford KAs are also cracking little cars.
Can you settle a long-running dispute between a pal of mine and myself? Is it car? Is it pronounced car, or is it KA?
you know what? It changes every day for me. The chaps at Ford tend to refer to them as Ford cars. Some of the salespeople will call them Ford KAs because it's a bit confusing. You say you're looking at a car, and then the customer goes, "Yeah, I'm looking at a car," and goes around in a circle. But I don't think they ever really bottomed it out. So KA one day or car the next. But the thing about that car was that when Ford developed it was they invested a lot of money into developing the car, and they had to make a decision to either redevelop the Fiesta at the time or to make this completely new Super Mini. And they put the money into developing the Ford KA. It was a huge success. Ford don't make, and most car companies don't make much money out of making small cars. So they carried on producing that car. I mean, they still make that car now, 10 years on. And the beauty of buying a used one is you've got a car that effectively is the same shape as the current model, which if you're a young driver, you want your car to look kind of trendy and, a little bit sort of sexy. So you're buying a car that actually looks like a new one if it's tidy. So I think the Ford KA, Ford car, is also a really, really good one to buy. But again, on those, it's worth spending perhaps a couple £100 extra or looking a little bit longer and getting one of the cars that's got power steering, because the first couple of years of those, the basic models didn't have it. So I'd sort of hang out and try to get one.
Now, on your website, how grand to have a website, you mentioned that you are happy to be a car finder.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. When kind of time allows, because it's unfortunately, as you know, this business is one of those things when you're off filming or you suddenly get a big job writing, it can be a bit of a nightmare. And you suddenly, as I am today, over in Belgium for a couple of days. But when I'm back in the office, I like nothing more than trying to help people find cars, and it could be anything from something like the Ford KA or £1,000 up to people looking for some super duper stuff with 50, 60, 70,000 pounds to spend, and everything in between. So if people are looking for cars, then I'm happy to either give them some advice or offer some advice, or if time allows, actually go out and find them something.
Well, I'll be repeating I'll be talking about your website address in a bit, so if somebody wants to get a pen and a piece of paper,
yeah, that's great.
I'd be happy to put it out for you. Now, in your adventures driving around, and I'm thinking about adventures on TV and stuff like that, how usual is it for a take to go wrong? So there's supposed to be this lovely shot of you driving out of the sunset or into the sunset or whatever, and then a chicken goes across the road or something, just the wheels fall off it, and you've got to go back and do it again, but still look sincere.
Yes, absolutely. It's just the most time-consuming thing in the world, because some of the TV companies don't want other cars in the background and this sort of thing, so you've got this lovely, beautiful, clear piece of road, and the director shouts, go, and you're on walkie-talkie and you drive down this fabulous piece of tarmac with cameras set on the side of the valley and this sort of thing, and with that, a big bread van with advertising or something comes by, and you get to the end of the shot thinking, great, we've got it, and you get that little, okay, just one more for luck, and that could take hours and hours and hours. But I mean, just apart from the driving shots, it's amazing how technical it gets. Things like, the sound men, they can hear babies crying from half a mile and helicopters flying by, and so there's loads and loads of technical issues. And then probably the worst part is when everything technically has gone right, there's no cars in shot, the sound's fantastic, and then what we call it is corpsing, when you just get a case of the giggles, and it's normally for no good reason at all. Something just strikes you funny, or you remember something somebody said over breakfast, and you can't stop yourself. It's just terrible. So there's hundreds and hundreds of minutes of tape on the cutting room floor with me laughing in it.
Well, that's good. At least you weren't crying.
No.
I wondered if you could take us through some of the tips and the tricks involved to get the best from buying and selling cars. Things that would apply across to the whole family, not just a teenager.
Well, I think the best thing, when you're buying a used car, the first thing to remember is don't be in a rush. Buy in haste, repent at leisure. The more time you can give yourself to find a used car, the more chance you stand of finding a good one. And I'm a great believer in, a lot of people say don't buy the first car you've seen. That's not strictly true, because it might be the right one, but always drive more than one example. I remember years ago we took a Lotus Elan in part exchange, and one of the salesmen took it in, and it was there waiting to be collected by a Lotus dealer, and I took it around the block for a quick spin. I got back, and I've got to say, I said to the salesman, have you driven that car? He said, well, no, I haven't actually. I said, well, it's absolutely horrible to drive, It was a convertible, the roof shook, the turbo lag was awful, the steering was all over the place. And I said, you know, when the chap from Lotus comes with his cheque, be prepared, he's not going to pay you all the money. A couple of days later, the chap from Lotus turned up duly with his cheque, and he said, right, before I give you the cheque, I have to drive it, because some of these are real pigs. And he went off down the road, and we all thought, oh, no, you know, that's it now. And he was gone about half an hour, and he came back in the showroom, beaming, absolutely beaming. He said, I'm sorry I've been so long, chaps. He said, but when you get a really nice one like that, you just want to carry on driving it. Now, the thing about it is, you know, a Lotus drives like a Lotus, and if you've driven a few of them, you'll know a good one from a bad one. But if you only ever drive one, you have nothing to compare it with. So my advice would be drive more than one example, and the only way you can do that is if you've got a little bit of time to look around. The second thing is do your homework, which is a very, very broad statement, but things like getting insurance quotes so that you know you can afford to insure the car, making sure as well that all the documentation is right. Buying a car with a short MOT can be a real shortcut to suddenly being faced with a big bill. So again, on these sort of cheaper cars, if you can get something with 6 months plus in terms of MOT, you've probably got 6 months of relatively trouble-free driving, because the minute it goes in for an MOT test, you know, they can identify all sorts of things. And if you spent £1,000 on it, spending £300 or £400 to get through an MOT is no laughing matter. And the other thing is, as I always say to people, never buy a car in the dark or the rain, because you know, that can hide a myriad of absolutely dreadful paint defects, and you won't want to crawl around underneath and that sort of thing. And when I was selling new cars, back in, well, from the 80s through to the 90s, we used to dread August the 1st, because ultimately it was the height of the summer, and you're delivering brand new cars, and they'd be sat on the forecourt under bright sunshine, and any paint blemishes, and believe me, on new cars you get them as well, were going to be, you know, glowing to the buyer. So as a salesman, you kind of hoped it would be a bit wet and drizzly.
So what should we look for if we're going to a covered showroom? Do they have lower wattage bulbs and things like that in? Not particularly. The thing about a lot of showrooms is they pack the cars in really tight, and it's quite difficult to kind of stand back and get a real view of it. I mean, things like paint differences in panel colours and that kind of stuff, you need to kind of stand back, and really you need to see it in natural light to be able to get a good indication. But certainly the big old used car supermarkets, some of the standard prep they do on their cars is really, really high. So, 9 times out of 10 you're going to be okay. But certainly with some of the used car pictures, when they're packed in really tight, they're kind of the Buntings and Balloons one that the archetypal Arthur Daly kind of places. The cars are packed in tight. You feel that you're asking for the crown jewels just to get the car moved out and take it for a test drive. That can put you under a huge amount of pressure and put you under a lot of big disadvantage, really. Yeah, I can see that, because just thinking, using maybe some of your psychology hat, the salesman's gone to all that trouble in front of you to get it out. Yeah. And you say, actually, I don't like it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the thing is that I think most salespeople are kind of armchair psychologists, because every day you're talking to potentially dozens of people, and you do meet people from all walks of life, and they tend to get reasonably, not necessarily good at judging people, because they do get it wrong an awful lot of the time, but they do see most situations through the course of a year, and they know the tricks to play to kind of put the customer under pressure and get commitment out of them, you know. At the end of the day, a salesperson's there to sell a car, and they're paid to do so you can hardly blame them. But there's times when, it takes a brave man or woman to walk away when the salesman's doing the puppy dog eyes to you, that sort of thing.
There was a wonderful story I heard of it, and I think it's in sales parlance, it's called an assumption close. Yes. And this guy was standing in Jack Barclay's showroom on the corner of Leicester Square. Yes. Not Leicester Square, Berkeley Square.
Berkeley Square, that's right.
Just under the Nightingale. And this guy had walked in, and he was standing looking at this Rolls or Bentley. And after a couple of minutes, the salesman walked over and he said, "Morning, sir." He said, "Morning." He said, "Would you like the initials in gold leaf or silver?"
Superb. Superb.
It's supposed to be true.
Well, I've heard that done. I mean,
have you?
Literally, yeah, absolutely, and certainly on top end, luxury cars. I was saying Porsche and Mercedes-Benz was the last franchise dealer I worked for, and some of the salespeople there were real characters. I mean, they would really chance their arm. There's the assume close, which is another one they used to say is, "Will you register at the home address or business address, or can I just take your postcode?" And they start filling the order form out. The other one's the alternative close, where you just say, would you like it in the blue or the silver? To which the answer's got to be blue or silver. You know,
that's right,
not yes
because nowhere else to go, is there?
Absolutely. And there's lots and lots of, if you like, closes like that salespeople use. The half Nelson, when they say to you, if I could, would you? So if I could get your payments of £200 a month, would you go ahead? They've not actually committed to get £200, but you've committed to agree if they can. And they're taught this stuff, you know, that's how they make their money.
Yeah. No, I just love that use of the language, so that somebody other than yourself is taking charge of the decision making.
Yeah.
So you're not responsible for that.
No.
That nice person's going to do it.
No, that's right.
You know, and this is something slightly less expensive than my house. We can laugh, but there was a village in Wales about 7 years ago, and it was up for sale, this main street, which is virtually all of the village, and it was £850.
No.
It was, because in the next village, the local council had a lot of council property, and they couldn't afford to maintain it.
Right.
So they offered the houses for sale at 50p each, but you had to sign an agreement that you would restore, paint, and do this, that, and the other.
Right.
But you could buy it for 50p.
So they're selling a commitment, really.
Well, but they were getting rid of a burden round their neck, you know, because as the council, they had to be responsible for painting these things and looking after the plumbing and this, that, and the other. So they just removed that.
Yeah. Well, I think this is the wonderful thing about used cars. I mean, I started selling them in 1986, and, you know, the cars that I was selling new in 86 now are the cars you find in the £500 and unders in the classifieds. But I can remember those cars when they were brand new. I bought an old Audi Coupe, a GT Coupe last year, which I just remember as a great car back in the 80s. And it was, you know, it was £12,500. I picked it up last year for £450. I still have it on the drive, and it's a car that I jump into if I haven't got a press car or I'm not test driving something for someone else. Turn the key, it fires up and it goes, and I've still got that memory that it's a £12,000 car, you know. And I bought a Jag last week, a 4-litre Sovereign XJ8, which is a fantastic car. £48,000 new, and I paid £3,200 for it. So I find used cars very, very exciting for that reason. You know, I know people that have spent £3,000 just putting a set of alloys on their new car, you know.
Oh,
so
for sure.
To get the whole car for that seems to be a bargain.
And after 6 months, you've got to spend another £3,000 having them cleaned.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the thing is, if you buy a car for, you know, £1,000, £3,000, the way I look at it is the most you can lose on that car is £1,000 or three, you know, whatever you've paid for it in the first place. That's the most you can lose. But if you go and buy, you know, a new Ford Focus or a Renault Megane or a Vauxhall, you know, a Vectra or whatever, you're looking in 3 years on a new car to pretty much lose half the value of the car, which on those cars can be £8,000-10,000. Well, my view is with a used car, that gives you an awful lot of cash in the bank to spend on the car if you need to put it right, and the chances are you won't need to, so you're ahead of the game.
We're talking with Jason Dorr, the columnist with the Sunday Times, as a top broadcaster as well. Yes, you just heard him. His website is jasondorr, DAWE, one word, lowercase, .com/. Did I get that right? Yes, I did. In just a moment, some more tips on looking at today's car market. This is talkSPORT. I'm Mike Allen. Good morning.
talkSPORT Radio, which specialises in football.
What an unbelievable goal!
Fighting. And full-on phone calls.
You're going to lose the game?
The experts across the UK on 1089 and 1053 AM.
What I need is you.
And on the engineering apocalypse that is DAB Digital Radio.
That's it. Keep pushing.
talkSPORT.
Jason Dorr's with me this morning. We're just having a look at the motoring market, and we've looked at some of the tricks and psychology employed by people who sell cars, so you can't say you've not been warned. We've also thought a little bit about what to buy for a first car for persons that are just getting into the car business. But what about the car market today? So, Jason, what do you think on the new cars that are available to us, either as a family car and possibly as an alternative for moving the kids around, because all my friends who've got children seem to have a small support group following them behind in another vehicle. That's an exaggeration, but it's that way, and I sometimes think, this couldn't have happened before people had cars. How did they take children round? I mean, I can't remember. It's too long ago.
Well, I think we've just changed, haven't we? Because as a kid, I can't actually remember my father or mother saying to me, "Would you like to bring your friends out today to Longleat?" Or, you know, it was a family day out. It wasn't a family and friends day out. But families now, my children do. You know, can be an Etty come? Can we? You know, and suddenly we got 7 people to sort of ferry around. I mean, the good news is there's MPVs, there's people carriers now, and they're great. I mean, you can fit the people in. You chances are you get air conditioning on more modern models. They focus a lot on safety and that kind of stuff. And so if you are that kind of parent that feels duty bound to entertain your children by bringing their friends along, there are some great alternatives out there now.
So a friend of mine's got a Seat people mover.
Oh yeah.
And it's diesel.
Yeah.
And it's got automatic transmission, which apparently that's no longer available on the new options. They don't have that. You just have to have a manual shift. But fortunately, this one is automatic.
Yeah.
And they've had it about 3 years, maybe beyond. And it's done 20,000 miles.
Right.
So this car will be fantastic as an example of technology which was alleged to be in front of Volkswagen. I know it's owned by Volkswagen, but apparently they do all their new ideas on smaller issue stuff like Seat and Skoda.
That's right, yeah. I mean, it's very interesting because it's what they call platform technology. You know, Volkswagen Group own VW, Audi, Seat, Skoda. So what they've done is rationalise a lot of their development. So you'll find, for example, you know, an Audi TT that you've just gone out and spent £20,000 on with a 1.8 turbo engine. You can find that same identical engine in a Skoda. Which you can buy used for, you know, £5,000, and you'll find it in the Seat, and you'll also find it in the in the VW Passat and the Golf and this kind of stuff. And you're absolutely right. Seat is kind of the funky brand of the family, so the cars tend to be a little bit more dynamic and so forth. And actually, when you sit inside the car, a lot of the switchgear and the dials and what you call the touch points on the car will look absolutely identical to something you'll find in a VW or an Audi for a lot more money.
Yes, it's funny you should say that. I sat in their vehicle the other day, the Seat people mover, and it was so much space, and it looked so current, so now, and the dials on the dashboard, you know, they looked very Volkswagen Golf, you know. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, that Seat is kind of, if you think the first people carriers were the Renault S Max, and then along came the next generation of them, which was the Seat, the Galaxy, the next Renault S Max, and we're now on to, if you like, the third generation. There's a new Galaxy come out. Ford have brought out an S Max.
That's supposed to be very good, isn't it?
Very, very good. Yeah, very, very good. And the thing that's sort of starting to happen now with those MPVs is they really are starting to drive like, you know, saloon cars. So from the dynamic point of view, those people that felt like they were driving a minibus, if you like, during the week, and then on the weekend, yeah, great, it does its job. There's no compromise now. You get into an S Max and drive it. It drives better, really, than a new Mondeo, because it's actually the platform for